Yes, okay. All right, everybody. Sorry for the delay. Trying to figure out how to use this computer. And again, because I want to record the meeting, so I think you can hear me, right? Everybody can hear me, and you can see me. And so we're now online, and let me go to Cyber Campus and get that set up for our attendance. Go here, and we go to methodology, click here, and attendance, and make sure that you're able to see this. So go to share screen. And so you're watching on your screen, and we go to attendance. And here we are in week 4, we go add smart attendance. And your number is, as we wait for it to show up, and I don't see it showing up yet. Come on, Cyber Campus, you can do it. And it's not popping up. And we'll do one more time, add. It's not popping up, smart attendance. And well, that's a problem. Log out, log in. One more time. Go here, go to methodology, go to attendance, week 4, smart attendance, and nothing shows up. There it is. Okay, 856. 856 is your smart attendance number, 856. So let me go to Zoom. And what did I do? And what did I do? Go here. What's it doing? And 856. And I think I did something. So stop share. Okay, there we go. All right, so 856 is, I think, your smart attendance number. And yes, 856. All right, so that's your smart attendance number. You can see the screen there, 856. And all right, so let's go on then to the class materials.
Sir?
Yeah.
My computer cannot make my smart attendance page.
Yeah.
I think there is a server problem now.
Yeah, mine too.
What you're saying you're not seeing it?
Mine too.
Yeah, we cannot send our number 856 now.
Okay. Okay, so yeah. Let me see what's going on here. I see we got 7 people. So if I go to the chatting one more time, so you can all see me, right? And
Yes.
okay, so let's do this one more time. Cyber Campus, and close all this stuff down. Methodology, go to attendance, and here, and there's something wrong with Cyber Campus. You can't see Cyber Campus. Now, if I share the screen, can you see the Cyber Campus screen? You can see it, right?
Yes. We can get into smart attendance page, but
there's no number. I know.
Yes. Yeah. There's no blank.
Yeah. Why is this blank? Go here. Well, if I need to, I could just go in and enter in the who was here. So I just don't understand why is it doing that? That's weird. It unless, of course, because I'm signed in here. Let me just shut this thing down. Maybe if I, I saw. Okay, well, okay, can you see it now? Okay, now you can see it. All right. So I think maybe because I had signed on another computer, so you can see it now. 856 is your number. I think you can see it, right?
I can't
Not
like
yet.
enter the
I
number.
think there's no problem to your PC or something else, but
Yeah. You can see the number now though, 856, right?
yes, we can see it, but we can't make our blank page to insert 856. I think university's server that making smart attendance is making some problems now.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what to do about that. Okay, well, I'll tell you what, send me an email or chat an email and tell me tell me who was here. And let me know you're here and I'll go in and I'll just fix the smart attendance number. So it says 8, you can see it now, right?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay.
We can
Okay.
check your number.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so please, that you got your number, everybody can see it, 856, please, please do that. And let's go on with our material for the day. So let me stop the share and then go to the methodology class and open up the lesson plan for today. And make sure we do the share screen with that, share screen. And there you can see the lesson plan. And there we're covering chapter 7 and 8 of the Trompenaars and Hampton Turner book. And so you'll submit a paragraph by tomorrow, hopefully, so I can write comments and send it back to you. And the idea, of course, is that feedback where you send me comments and I reply to them, that's really useful in terms of learning. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I like to have these weekly paragraphs, because I can write comments and send them back to you, as well as give you a chance to speak in class and practice your English and your presentation skills. And so let's go ahead and continue with the notes. So let me open up the notes for this class and we'll go chapter 7A here. And I think you can see those notes, although I'm not certain, so I have to stop share and then redo the share screen here. And so you can see the, I think you can see these, yes, you can see these notes. So how far do we get involved in our professional lives with our personal lives? That's an important topic. This is specific versus diffuse cultures. Trompenaars and Hampton Turner highlight how there's strong differences in these societies between, say, American society in particular, and European society regarding the relationship of a person's professional life to other aspects of their life. And diffuse cultures highlights how somebody who is your boss at work is a high status person, is somebody that is your boss throughout life, throughout all aspects of your life, he highlights. There's our work relationship that we have between a manager and an employee and a subordinate at a place of employment. And then there are all other aspects of social interaction are separate out as a specific case. So that typically characterizes the United States, right? That we Americans, again, these are all stereotypes. These are all largely romantic, false notions. But in terms of romantic images that Americans have of themselves, that's like, how do I explain it in my other classes? For example, in terms of ideal images and the emotions that go with these ethical notions, like, we have this romantic image that what you do in your personal life, it's none of my business. You're just my student here in my class. I'm kind of like your boss. I'm the professor. What you do outside of this place is none of my business. I'm not supposed to evaluate you. even if you do really bad things outside of this class, or if you, whatever you do, it's not related to our professional existence. Whereas in other societies, there is a strong expectation that your boss at work is somebody that you honor and respect, for example, in your private life. So I think it's true here in Korea, you are expected, right? Like when you come to work, in traditional Korean society, and I think Japanese and other society, that when you come to work, it is time to go drinking. Say it's Thursday or Friday night, and the boss says, "Okay, let's go out and get drunk." You're expected to go out and get drunk. You're expected to go out with the boss, and we do that in America too. But we have this romantic image that your boss cannot make demands on your time outside of your job. So it's like a romantic reflex notion, you know, that my work is my work and my social life is none of your business, even though it is our business. And that goes back to this notion that Trompenaars and Hampton Turner highlight, that these ideals of being specific or versus diffuse, or being universalistic versus individualistic. These are all ideals that people express in terms of their norms, because you ask somebody to explain what does it mean to be an American. Where, as an American, I'll tell you what it means. It means, in terms of our values, that individual achievement is most important. What you do in your private life is none of my business. And I'll give you all of these romantic simplifications as rhetorical expressions, because this is also behavior that I communicate to you. And we communicate to each other as we work together in the company or an organization or in a classroom to try to achieve our shared objectives. And so that goes back to this notion that Trompenaars highlights, that culture is really important. You need a culture to communicate with people. You need a culture to communicate, not just in terms of words, but to communicate with people in terms of feeling, in terms of communicating empathy, in terms of organizing with each other. And if we generate hostility between each other because we typically unintentionally insult each other by not being aware about each of our own respective cultural, romantic, stereotypical self-images that are part of our, what he calls in the book, our respective moral edifice that differs in America versus differs in Sardinia, Italy, and differs in Korea, we're going to unintentionally make mistakes and generate irritation and even anger and hostility. And we're not going to be able to cooperate to be effective as a business unit or a professional unit. So that's a brief recap of the approach of this book. The Trompenaars and Hampton Turner make that point. We're not trying to understand Italian, Sardinian culture or American culture or Korean culture. We're trying to understand differences and culture. And they make that notion that, of course, you think that France, that's very close to Britain, and Britain founded the United States, that, culture would not be very different. He even notes that in Britain, in a diffuse culture, in France, in a diffuse culture like France, every level of personality in life permeates all others, right? So Monsieur le Directeur is an authority in whatever or wherever you encounter your director, including on art, including on food, including on other topics that don't have anything to do with the job and the professional field that you're in. His opinion, for example, on high cuisine, hot cuisine, are considered to be better than those of his subordinates. His value as a citizen is assumed to be higher in France. Whereas Americans, we say, no, we're all equal. It doesn't matter. We don't do that in America. Well, they do it in France. And we also do it in America, even if we don't like to admit it to ourselves, because it's part of our moral, ethical edifice of our romantic self-image of what it means to be me, Mr. American, right? You can tell I'm really interested in stereotyping and image theory, they rarely use the term stereotypes. I use it all the time in my work, in my background training with totally different professors. But I can see the relationships between what they're talking about here and what I was trained in terms of political psychology and image and stereotype theory. And I've been always trying to develop what I learned in international relations and political science graduate school of this notion of nationalism and stereotyping, and to go deeper within it, to understand it more deeply, to add to that framework that I learned from my professor who died 25 years ago. And this Trompenaars book has really helped me do that. Try to begin to develop further and add on further in this theoretical framework, which is what we try to do in social science. We try to build and develop and refine our theoretical framework. So I really like what Trompenaars is trying to do here, because I've learned a lot from it. So to go back to Mansour, the director, he probably expects to be deferred to by those who know him, wherever and whatever context in which they meet him, whether it be playing a game of tennis or going to the restaurant or going to a museum. Mansour director's opinion is considered to be really significant. And so reputation of an individual, of course, always bleeds over into other areas of life to some extent. It's true in the United States too, but we do not like to admit it to ourselves. The extent to which it does bleed in depends upon the other culture's focus on specificity, small versus diffuseness. So Kurt Lewin is one of the founding fathers of modern organizational psychology. Kurt Lewin was one of these Europeans who was influenced by the emergence of modern psychology at the end of the 19th century, with people like Sigmund Freud and others developing further. And Kurt Lewin, I think, was one of these Europeans who fled Europe when Nazism rose, and where did he go? He went to the United States, of course, like so many of these other psychologists and professors and actors and directors. They fled to the United States in the 1930s, and his ideas are really important in business administration from the point of view of how do you guide and direct your people in an organization? How do you motivate them? How do you get the most out of your so-called human resources? So current Lewin's life spaces, U-type, he says, are American type life spaces where there's much more public and private space. And the public space is segregated into many specific sections. I think private means like family. What do you do in your that's assumed to be what prevails in the United States. Your private or individual social, intimate life, that's your private space. And then we have lots of other public spaces as Americans, both as our work and our worship, where we go to church to worship God, in our recreation, when we play in golf, or we go bowling, or all of those different activities are part of the public world. Whereas in the German world, it's all interrelated. American culture, he says, is comparatively accessible, and the American personality is friendly and accessible. One reason being that public life is segmented. It's not a very big deal or commitment to allow somebody into my life as a coworker, or as a tennis player, or as a volunteer in the local Red Cross civil society organization, because you lock that person in that relationship, right? What you do in your personal life, it's none of my business, but when we come together here to work in the local Red Cross volunteer charity organization, or when we meet to play golf in our golf club or whatever, we're here to play golf. I like you as a golf person, but you don't have the right then to, or it's not normally expected that you would then expect me to invite you over to my house just because we play golf, or we go bowling once a week. Being a golfing buddy does not allow someone to become a close personal friend. And so here you see a little image highlighting these differences. You have our private lives, and then we have our lives regarding our access to, purchasing a car, going to work, how we dress, our titles, and what kind of status do we acquire through having a really expensive furniture or appliances, and then in the specific relationship, there is just this overlap. We're golf buddies, or we're workers, or we're volunteers at the local food bank or at the Red Cross, and this characterizes Lewin's circles here in terms of in a German type culture. These are all overlap. These all overlap in a German type culture, and close personal friends. If you become if you're working with somebody, you're expected to get along with them in a much broader realm. Like, for example, like we already mentioned, you're supposed to go drinking with them. You're supposed to go on vacation with them. Like I told you, right? When I first came here, when the university was dealing with different financial situation, we would all go on vacation. All the professors was expected to go somewhere to a retreat because we're the faculty. And so we're supposed to do that. Americans, they typically don't do those kinds of things. In the G culture, the German culture, the public space is small, with the private spaces being large and diffuse, covering all areas. Someone who becomes a friend in one area of life is assumed to be a friend in all areas. So there are a few close friends are let in. If you're going to let somebody in who's going to be your friend in everything, then you have to make sure that you select the right person, but to be your friend. But Americans, they claim everybody's a friend, which means they're not really friends; they're acquaintances. But Americans, they assume anybody that they meet and interact with and deal with on a regular basis and get along with them, that they're a friend. But in German type cultures, standing and reputation also cross over more readily into all other areas. So Herr Dr. Muller is at the university, but he's Herr Dr. Muller also at the butcher shop. And the butcher at the butcher shop will know that he's Herr Dr. Muller, not just some guy wanting to buy some meat. He's Herr Dr. Muller. And at the local school. And his wife is a Frau Dr. Muller. And she is known by her husband's job title everywhere as well. I mean, that's, for an American, that just strikes me as really weird. And you see it in the language. And again, things change, but like when I was studying Polish language, Poland is another European country next to Germany. There are terms like if you're the wife of a general, a Polish general, there's a specific title for you as a woman who's married to a Polish general, right? Or a Polish professor. Very Yangban-oriented culture, right? In the US, in the U culture, a title is a specific label for a specific job in a specific place. So he gives you examples of how Americans treat people in different contexts with different labels. Germans assume that Americans consequently are difficult to really know, because they limit themselves to limited area, they limit their friendships to limited areas. So we're golfing buddies, we're co-workers or co-volunteers at the local food bank or the Red Cross, but that's it. They appear garrulous with each other, but they're superficial regarding others as superficial. And for Americans, your public interaction is heavily emphasized on consumption, including, for example, buying things and selling things, buying a house and selling a house. It's not as much as it used to be, but Americans would move all of the time, right? Whereas in Europe, of course, this notion of an ancestral village, or in Korea, that there is an ancestral village, selling your village home, how can you do that? Americans, they're mobile, they have garage sales, right? Where Americans will sell the most intimate things that they own because they don't need them, including, for example, particularly in the fall, you'll see people that are moving from one place to another place, and they don't want to take all of the things that they own with them, and so they will sell them in a garage sale, in the garage where the car's parked. And they put up signs, and you see the most personal things for sale, including like pornography, like your collection of Playboy magazines. You mean you maybe everybody, lots of people read Playboy, but you're not supposed to admit it. And you'll see it. It's for sale. You want it, like, or like for example, my parents just passed away, and they had a garage sale for everything in the house. The most personal things that my family had for generations, put on Facebook. Facebook makes it easier, right? Garage sale, all this stuff is for sale, That's it. Sell the house, sell everything, and move on. And the Americans at parties often lack discretion, telling stories of sexual incompatibility with a stranger. So they'll tell stories about their love life with people they don't really know. Americans confess in public spaces in order to avoid communication about their private life. So in other words, I guess it's heavily oriented towards consumption. I mean, this is something for me to think about as I go over this again and again and again in teaching this class. We all have our alcohol stories. We all have our bad food stories where we got sick and threw up, and we all have, and we will talk about these issues pretty openly with other people. But they talk about their mistakes or accidents, about what they did with something, with alcohol or with involving men or women, but then they won't talk about their real private life, like their relationship with their family or their father or mother, for example. He notes that in France, the limits of the public are evident even in how large are the private spaces, and how, for example, the French, they put barriers, high hedges and high walls, and they shutter their windows, whereas if you've been to American neighborhoods, right, traditional American neighborhoods, they have a Jeep, a house, and a lawn, and it's open, and people can, they're at the same time they're open, like this is my house and this is my lawn, and you can see it and admire it. But then there's the house, and so there's a limit. What goes on in that house is nobody else's business. But the French, they're much more hidden in terms of their organization of their life, and if you were invited to dinner to a French household, you should not assume that you may wander through the house. You were restricted to space for hospitality, and so if you go to an American house, an American dinner party, once you're in the house, you can go just about anywhere, but not in France or Germany. And they give you a story there about how in a diffuse culture like the Italian culture, he claims that all the stories that he tells, this ongoing case of MCC, that these are true stories. He changes the names to protect people. So there was actually an effort to try by an American trained manager to encourage competition among people in the organization through pay for performance. And for Italians, this is considered to be outrageous. That you're encouraging people to be in competition with each other. And because this notion that, working at an Italian company is part of being a member of it. Well, again, he describes it later in the book, part of the family culture. Why would you purposely encourage members of the family to view each other as competitors? It's not acceptable. But the Americans and the Dutch are more likely to accept those kinds of pay arrangements because they compartmentalize their relationships with each other. The U-type person, the American type person tends to see things as impersonal, whilst the G-type person will tend to see business decisions as highly personal. If an American lets in a G-type person, a diffuse type person, to share one component of their public space, public sphere, the latter may assume that he or she may have been admitted to a large diffuse public space. So in other words, this means that, for example, if they later learn that new person that was admitted into the American public sphere, that person later learns that an American came to that town where that G-type person lives and didn't contact them, that G-type person is going to, that German type diffuse person will take offense. I mean, if I let you in, you are expected to have a relationship with me beyond our professional life. And if you don't, I'm likely to assume that there's something wrong. And I think that, my sense is that I think Korea has these diffuse type cultures. And I was told, for example, when I first came here, when the Korean professors that hired me, when they came in and they say, it's time to go out to the restaurant, to the 식당, I better not say I'm tired. You're expected to go, right? Yeah. I think what I recall they say in the book, you're unmuted, right? So we can hear you when you're speaking. Just want to make sure that everybody's unmuted. Okay, you can unmute yourself. Well, I think that's a point made. First off, you never criticize somebody publicly. You're not supposed. Supposedly, it's more acceptable to do it in the United States. If a group or an individual is criticized for performance, that it's not considered to be as outrageous as it would be in Korea if I were to criticize somebody for their behavior in front of another group of people, in front of the group of people. You have to be careful how you do it. I think they make that point repeatedly in the book in terms of Confucian cultures, saving face. You can't dishonor people publicly. That's and I certainly get a sense of that regarding Korea as a nation state, Korea as a country. This notion that we have to look respectable, and that's true in America too. But again, this romantic image we have in America of ourselves, of what Americans are, that that we're only concerned about performance. We're not concerned about being embarrassed in public so much because we all make mistakes and we're all pragmatic and we all want to do better. At the same time, Americans are obviously concerned about being embarrassed in front of other people. But there are these romantic, the point that they make in the book is that all societies share these common dilemmas. It's just that when they're trying to address a new problem, they start from different places, right? There's more communitarian group focus in Confucian cultures versus Northern European cultures. And since you're from Sardinia, Italy, Southern Europe is really interesting because he says in many ways, Southern Europe is more like East Asia. Like it's more group oriented. It's more, it's different too. Like, Italians are noted for being willing to show their emotions quite openly, regularly, right? But he does make that point that he claims that Southern European culture is more has some interesting similarities, more so with Asian culture than with Northern European culture. Like, for example, this diffuseness aspect is stronger in Southern Europe, like it is in East Asia, and I think that would be a strong emphasis that they would make in terms of differences between North and Southern European cultures.
The fact that Korean people or Korean bosses invite you to go for a drink or go eating in a restaurant, is that specific or is that diffuse? Because if it's diffuse like German people, you can be offended if they don't treat you like this in other areas of life, or it is different because it is a boss and it's specific. It's a
Well, I
specific-
think, you're raising all these excellent points. And again, it's this yin yang approach. We know in America too, that when the boss, there's a social event.
Yeah.
A company social event that you should go. If you don't go, people are going to know you didn't go.
Yeah.
But those are typically special events, like the Christmas party or a birthday party.
Mhm.
But if the boss, but I think in Asian cultures, if it's a weekly event, like on Thursday nights, we're all going to go out, we're going to go stay out until midnight. There's an expectation that you will do that. So again, you're right. I mean, and this is coming up a lot, for example, and in this process of globalization and diversification, which is the entire reason for the publication of this book, because all of these different cultures are integrating with each other, sometimes more easily than at other times. Women, for example, have always had that challenge in the United States that, when I was born, women typically did not have a career. Now women have a career, but women still are often responsible for taking care of children. So women are often in a situation where they're not able to just, go out with the boss at night because they got to go home and feed the kids, even if they have a job. So they're put at a disadvantage because they're not socializing as much as the men are in terms of career prospects and career promotion by their bosses. So, and this means that there has to be more of an effort to be concerned about people's family life, that employers, if they want to be successful in America, they have to provide daycare. They've got to take care of, they have to help their female employees, not just the female employees, but they have to help the employees' families take care of the children. And that's like a diffuse notion. I mean, when I was a kid, you didn't worry about that. Daycare, that's your problem. You want to pay somebody to take care of your kids, fine. But don't expect that the company has an obligation to help you get daycare. And this has become a topic here in Korea because they never really had to worry about daycare because grandma would always be available for daycare. But that's even changing now as well. So like this daycare center in front of the university, that only started like 5-6 years ago. And there was complaints and because Korea is trying to develop more rapidly. But the point is, you're right, that there's these overlaps, but there are these stereotypes or simplifications. Stereotypes are not true. Stereotypes are gross oversimplifications. Let's put it in a more romantic way. They're ideal romanticizations of what a typical American is and should be. Like, I don't care about your private life. It's none of my business. I just want to see how I perform here. And that's not even, it's not even true. But there's that image in our brains that emotions associate that you as a manager, when trying to get people to change their behavior, you have to know how to approach them in a way that's non-threatening and that's even inspiring. When I'm the boss and you know I'm the boss and I have a big influence over your life because I pay you, I evaluate you, and you know it and I know it. So I'm already a source of potential challenge. Now I want you I want to know why, I want to have a Christmas party. Oh, you can't go. Why can't you go to the Christmas party? What's your problem? We want to have a company Christmas party. What if that person is, I want to come to, that person is gay. So if you come to a Christmas party, you're expected to bring your date or your husband or spouse. This gay person is going to bring their gay partner. How are they going to feel about that? Right? I mean, these are all issues you have to confront that make us think about this yin-yang interaction between mechanistic versus universalistic approaches, diffuse versus specific approaches that are present because because even in America, for the longest time, we've always known that if somebody's got intense personal problems, it will impact their workplace. So Americans have been upset about alcoholism for many generations, right? So somebody's an alcoholic, that becomes a concern for me as the boss. And that's an old tradition. So yeah, you're raising these questions that seem to illustrate this. The point they state in the book is these are endpoints on a continuum that all societies fit on that reflect their differences as to where they start in responding to a challenge, a stimulus, a problem. Individualistic versus communitarian, specific versus diffuse. And they are all dilemmas that they all face. And then these ways of dealing with things, they started developing many generations ago, even centuries ago. And then they become institutionalized as part of culture. And culture includes values and norms. Norms are a way of behaving. Values are a way of idealizing the way we behave. And that includes symbols, rhetorical expressions, explanations, because symbols, that's what words are, they're symbols. There's a whole field of studying it, semiotics. And once you start talking about ethics, you start talking about rhetoric. Rhetoric is, how do I persuade you to do what I claim is the right thing versus the wrong thing? The right thing is good. The wrong thing is bad, even evil. So emotion becomes involved. Losing face. Yes, specific cultures have considerable freedom of direct speech because of their small areas of privacy, which are clearly separated from public life. So diffuse cultures, members will say something like, do not take this personally quite often, but American and Dutch managers in specific cultures are particularly prone to insult unintentionally their diffuse partners. U-type specific culture members tend to appreciate less the principle of losing face. They still appreciate it, but they appreciate it less. It is what happens when losing face is what happens when something that people perceive as being private is made public, and it shouldn't be made public. And even if I'm not performing my job well, or I made a mistake, some people consider that to be a private issue that you don't bring up in front of everybody at the group meeting of the organization. In diffuse cultures, much more time is taken in negotiations to get to the point, because it is impossible not to take things personally. So avoiding private confrontation takes more time. So Dutch audiences, for example, at Dr. Trompenaar's workshops, attack when asked for their feedback. Like you say, well, you're full of crap, Mr. Trompenaars. This is completely wrong. Trompenaars might say, well, I must have done a bad job. And then they want more workshops. English and French audiences tend to be more sensitive in providing feedback to Trompenaars and will not be heard from again because the topic is too private. A Ghanaian student insisted that grades not be made public on a notice board because it was too insulting. So national differences. National differences are sharp, indicating that diffuse versus specific differentiation in cultures can be a source of deep potential incomprehension. Okay, here's our first of many votes that I put on Cyber Campus. It says a boss asks a subordinate to help him paint the boss's house, you know, during the weekend, like on a Saturday or Sunday. The subordinate who does not feel like doing it discusses the situation with a colleague at work. A, the colleague argues, you don't have to paint the boss's house if you don't feel like it. He is your boss at work. Outside, he has little authority. And B says, the subordinate argues, despite the fact that I don't feel like it, I will paint it. He is my boss, and you can't ignore that outside of work either. So this is anonymous vote. And let me do the screen share on the Cyber Campus. We vote. Am I still logged in? Okay. So then we go down to okay, so please vote. Do you choose A or B? And it's anonymous, so I don't know who you are. And so A, you don't have to paint the house, or B, you feel like you should paint the house. You should come over on a Saturday and help your boss paint his house. And so so far 4 people have voted. So only one person says, despite the fact I don't feel like painting the boss's house, I will paint it. He is my boss, and you can't ignore that at work. So that's it, 5 people? Okay. So 4 of you are more like the American view. Yeah. It just brings to mind some experiences I had growing up with Italian cultures. Well, it's too long to go into right now when I went back in the US. But okay, so there we go. So a couple of you would paint the boss's house. And okay, so let me go on to back to the notes. And oh, that's the wrong one. Sorry, stop share, go back to the notes. It'll be here. Okay, so you can see this, right? And then figure 7.3 illustrates the portion of managers above that asked the above question responded. So who would not paint the house? Refuse. 92% of Dutch people said, F you, I ain't painting your house. Same in Sweden, Switzerland, Finland, high ranked. But who's at the bottom here? The Indians would, the Chinese would, the Malaysians would, the Kuwaitis, the Italians. Would you, Carla? What's your name again? Gloria? Gloria, would you paint the house? No, you don't have to tell me. Don't tell me. So you can see that a lot of Italians would paint the house. What about Koreans? South Koreans, about in the middle there. I think we have one Cambodian student. I don't see Cambodia on this chart. All right. But yeah, I mean, yeah, well, a lot of Singaporeans, Hong Kongers, yeah, they would paint the house. But the Dutch, like if you were the boss, you wouldn't even dare ask in those societies. So most of Northern Europe would not paint the house. 64% of Japanese would not as well. Did you notice that? Even though you see a lot of Chinese, China here, you think of Confucian culture. Japan is way up here. How does he explain that? He says, other diffuse Asian societies members, the majority said they would. The authors interviewed the Japanese managers to find out what was going on. They say it was due to the fact that the Japanese never wait until their boss asks to paint the house. So they would do it with just immediately without being asked. And that's maybe a good point to illustrate the importance of doing research, because we're supposed to do a research project in this class, right? When you gather your research, you can do, if you find something in your research in interviewing other students about their life experience here at Catholic University of Korea, that you find something that is interesting, you can re-interview them again and get more information to find out what really might be happening. I mean, it was really important for him to go back in this case and find out, why are the Japanese so different from the Chinese and the Malaysians and the Singaporeans? Diffuse cultures refuse to do business in a mental subdivision called work or business that is separated from the rest of life, because everything is connected with everything else. Consequently, dealing with a culture more diffuse than our own feels excessively time-consuming if we're not used to dealing with diffuse cultures. You know, you have to build relationships with people from diffuse cultures, which takes time and effort. With the Americans, they like to believe, you know, it's all transaction. The diffuse culture partner may want to know where you went to school, what you think of life, art, music, culture, literature, because these preferences reveal character and they form friendships. They also make deception nearly impossible. Investing up front in building the relationship is as important as the deal itself in diffuse cultures. So relationships are really important. And the companies that do these things win contracts. So, you know, he gives you an example of the Swedish company beating out, I can't remember, an American company, because the Swedes knew if you want to do business with Argentinians, which, you know, was dominated by Italian culture traditionally, you have to build a relationship with those people. So the Swedes, so they went down there and they spent 5 days with these people to get to know them, and they got the contract. A private space relationship had to be created and had to exist in several spaces first before the Argentinians would discuss business. The Americans, they lost after they said, you know, we're just going to spend 2 days and they got to go home. Even though they had a superior product and presentation. The Argentinians didn't trust the Americans. Specificity and diffuseness are about strategies for getting to know people. You know, and again, that's part of culture that's inherited. The Argentinians build relationships of trust first, then move to the specific business negotiations. The Americans appear too impersonal, pushy and direct, and even silly in believing logic can force others to agree with them. Americans work at the specific level first, and if it works, then expand outward to other areas. The Argentinians appeared unwilling to stick to the matter of concern and kept distracting the discussion with social distractions and personal questions. The diffuse strategy, he claims, is common in Asia, Southern Europe, Japan, Mexico, and France and Mexico. One circles around the stranger, getting to know him or her diffusely, then getting to business when relationships of trust have been established. The specific strategy means getting straight to the point. That's the neutral objective aspects of the business deal in the specific American style culture. If the other party is interested, then circling around the other in order to facilitate the deal. Okay, both approaches claim to save time. The diffuse approach aims to avoid entering into years-long relationship in which the unsavory aspects emerge early. Know fully what you're getting into before you begin a relationship that you hope is going to be stable and secure and a foundation for building upon it to achieve other objectives in the future. In the specific approach, we do not waste time wining and dining an individual who is not fully committed to the agreeing to the specifics of a deal. So there's the little images that they provide about how you get to business in a diffuse culture, and then specific cultures work out from, let's make the deal went well, hey, let's do more business in the future and go into other areas. So he says that specific cultures also are also called low context, and diffuse cultures are called high context. Context refers to how much I have to know before effective communication can occur. How much knowledge is taken for granted by those who are in conversation with each other, and how much reference is tacit, unspoken common ground. In high context cultures, including Japan and France, and I guess South Korea, before business can be discussed, strangers must be filled in. In low context cultures like the US and the Netherlands, the rulemaking process should include the stranger. Then initial structural requirements should be as few as possible. Adaptability and flexibility characterizes low context cultures. In high context cultures like Japan and France, I keep putting in South Korea. Again, that one of those three books that I mentioned, the Trompenaars book, the Geert Hofstede Software of the Mind book, and the third book, When Worlds Collide. Two of those, I think all three of the books, they say there's something unique about South Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore. And they imply it's because of the overwhelming influence of British and American culture in Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore, and South Korea. So I put South Korea there, but they don't put it there, and I'm not so certain, because there are a lot of elements of American culture that have strongly influenced Korean culture. Going back to, some of you I think you're in the American politics class, right? I mean, the big impact of Protestant Christianity colored by the American experience here, right, has been tremendous. And, the association of Protestant Christianity with the American nation, it's traditionally called the American religion. Richness and subtleness characterizes this interaction in high context cultures. But foreigners who are not fully assimilated may never really feel comfortable in those societies. According to growing evidence, Westerners working for Japanese companies never feel like they're really inside. They're not Japanese, so they're not really considered to be part of the core. In non-French, may never feel fully accepted in a French company with its diffuse culture and its thousands of diffuse connections. Diffuse cultures tend to look at objects, things, and specifics before considering how they are related in specific cultures, but diffuse cultures tend to look at the relationships and connections before considering all the separate pieces. Okay. So the effect of specific diffuse orientation on business. Favorite devices of the Americans to motivate employees include management by objectives and pay for performance to motivate employees. It is evidence of this part of the specific orientation in part. In management by objective, we first agree on the objectives and then the specifics. Supervisor A agrees with subordinate B on objectives of B towards B will work to achieve when B's evaluation is due in some period of time, 6 months or a year. A's evaluation of B will then use those agreed objectives as benchmarks for the evaluation. So typically it's called you meet with your boss and you agree on your objectives and you write them down. It's sort of the term that we used when I was at the American University in Bulgaria when we were setting up that new university was a goal setting letter. So I'm the provost, right? I'm the guy who's going to hire and fire and evaluate. And we meet and we agree what we're going to achieve over the next 12 months in terms of your grade, your teaching performance, your research activity. And then I use that goal setting letter to evaluate you when it's time for contract evaluation. And if B achieves worthy objectives in this way, then that's a productive relationship. In diffuse cultures, management by objective is not effective because they start with the assumption that the relationship between A and B that increases or decreases output, it's the relationship that increases or decreases output, not the other way around. So we build a relationship and that encourages your performance, not I want something, you want something, you give it to me, I give you good evaluation. First, we establish a relationship, we're committed to each other. In diffuse cultures, first we establish a relationship with each other. Objectives may go out of date by the time of evaluation. B may have done something more valuable in altered circumstances in those 12 months, which were not in the agreed objectives. Something happened in those 12 months that we didn't foresee. Building and maintaining strong and lasting relationships is necessary to accommodate the unexpected. Contracts and fine print are inhibiting in diffuse cultures. Japanese corporations use terms unfamiliar to Westerners. They talk about acceptance time. That is the time necessary to discuss proposed changes before implementing them. And nemawashi, binding the roots of trees and suburbs before transplanting them. In other words, engaging in extensive consultations before implementing changes. So it's all about circling around before coming to the point. Paper performance is unpopular in diffuse cultures, he claims. It severs relationships arbitrarily before it appears that the recipient is claiming all of the credit for success while denying the importance of relationships that include respect, affection for others with whom we have diffuse contacts and shared private spaces. If we're paid for performance, you're paid for your month sales performance. In fact, your success depends upon how other salespeople may have helped you, and you had helpful and inspiring supervisors. So I want to get to another exercise here. In specific cultures, one hears expressions such as, don't mix business and pleasure, and don't talk shop. In other words, indicating a cultural attitude to keep separate from each other's specific life spaces. It's perhaps harder to coerce subordinates if their lives are honeycombed with separate compartments. Only one area of life can be dominated, and the subordinate can call on resources from other compartments. Diffuse cultures tend to have all their eggs in one basket. This discussion of a difference between specific and diffuse cultures is about relative, not absolute separation, since most cultures have some kind of separation between life spaces. But diffuse cultures do tend to have lower turnover and employee mobility. Loyalty is emphasized, and the multiplicity of human bonds in diffuse cultures. They tend not to headhunt, lure away employees of other companies. So, in the United States, we have these headhunter firms that are seeking to poach talent from other companies. In diffuse cultures, takeovers are rare because of the disruption they cause. Oh, sorry. Banks and shareholders have longer-term relationships, including cross-holdings on each other's companies. Share price is less motivating. In the United States, it's all about the Dow Jones, the Standard & Poor's, how they perform every 3 months, every quarter of the year. Whereas in more diffuse cultures, including Germany and elsewhere, there's more of a long-term focus in finance. So when I was in graduate school, in terms of trying to explain why the Germans and the Japanese were doing so much better in their economies, part of the answer was that the Germans and the Japanese had a longer finance orientation that emphasized banks and bank funding, not stocks so much in raising capital for investment for a company. Criticizing people without devastating the entire life space of the target of the criticism is much easier in specific cultures. He gives you an example of somebody got murdered for criticizing them in public, their performance in a diffuse culture. We must not assume that these cultures are being primitive. In Japanese cultures, workers with larger families receive bigger salaries. Why? because they have larger families, so they get more money. They get help in searching for housing. They often provide recreational facilities, vacations, and consumer products at reduced prices. I've even encountered that here, I mean, I could give you lots of little stories, but it's different from the US. A test. Okay, another exercise. Some people think a company is usually responsible for the housing of its employees. Therefore, a company has to assist an employee in finding housing. Other people think that the responsibility for helping for housing, the responsibility for housing should be carried by the employee alone. It's too much. It is so much to the good if the company helps. So let's go back and look at the exercise. I want to got that wording correct. Let me go back to the cyber campus. And go back to vote. And question 2, a test. So, should the company help you find housing? A, and again, it's anonymous. And the majority of the class thinks, yes, please vote if you haven't voted. Yes, a company should help their employees find a place to live when they come work for the company. And a couple of people say, no, this is the typical American view. Okay, and then go back to the notes. And so what were the responses we saw elsewhere? Should the company provide housing? Among the Japanese, 45% said it's not the company's responsibility. 89% of Swedes said it's not the company's responsibility. Only 11% of Serbs says it's not the company's responsibility. 85% of Americans said it's not the company's responsibility to help a new employee, coming onto town from another place. You can imagine, like you're from Ohio like me and you get a job in California, never been to California, know nothing about California, and you got to find a place to live in Los Angeles. Good luck. So, but in Serbia, they'll help. Hungary, China, yes. Russia, Czech Republic, South Korea, pretty strong there. Italy, more like America, right? Germany. Most North European managers say it's not the company's responsibility to help their new young employee find a place to live in their new city. Most Asians say it is. Singapore is the exception to Asian societies because Western principles have become more prevalent there. So there you see that statement where he says, Singapore is different. Hong Kong, wow. I mean, well, before the pandemic, that was just notable how difficult it is to find a place to live in Hong Kong. I mean, and the company has no obligation to help you find a place to live. That was one of the nice, when I first came here to CUK, one of the benefits of Catholic University of Korea, people told me, was that this was one of the few places in Seoul, this area right here, where you could find relatively inexpensive housing if you were a student. If you went 1 or 2 kilometers in any direction, it became really expensive. But right around the university, you could still find inexpensive room to rent if you were a student. And I don't know if that's still the case. I'm probably it's not going to stay that way because you see all the construction going on around here. So Japanese consumers tend to buy Japanese products because the benefit is diffused throughout Japanese society to promote Japan's development. I think that's something about like Korea too. I mean, I just got a sense, you see my Apple, and when I first came here, the internet really wasn't set up for Apple products. They wanted you to buy a Samsung. They wanted a Samsung, computer. They may reject Western imported goods because their value is specific. And again, trying to explain how the legacy of communism is an issue throughout the textbook. Okay, well. The mix of emotion and involvement. Various combinations of levels of emotion and affectivity exist in various combinations. A business partner may be emotional and expressive. This is, we bring in the Italian culture particularly here. A business partner may be emotional, expressive, but not involved emotionally with the interlocutor. Another business partner may be involved in your private spaces while also being cool and neutral. Talcott Parsons describes 4 combinations yielding 4 different sorts of primary response: approval, esteem, enjoyment, love. So what does he mean by this? 4 combinations of primary response by interlocutor to me, for example, is outlined by Talcott Parsons. So affective versus neutral, that is showing, not showing, or showing your emotions. Diffuse versus specific. Diffuse, affective, positive interactions. The expected relational reward is love. The negative reaction is hate. And it is a strongly expressed pleasure that diffuses many life spaces. In diffuse neutral positive interactions, the expected relational reward is esteem. In terms of effective means emotional, neutral means not so much emotional, focusing upon esteem. The negative interaction is disappointment. Specific affective, specific emotional, positive interactions, the expected relational reward is enjoyment. So the focus here is upon relational reward, enjoyment, pleasure, right? Enjoying yourself. This emphasizes more, social status and respect. This emphasizes a more emotional aspect. And then the 4th one is specific neutral societies, emotion, positive interactions. The relational reward is approval. The negative interaction is criticism. More neutral cultures do not risk such extreme mood swings into effective rewards. So by using the following question, the authors of the book have attempted to measure the relative preferences for love, esteem, enjoyment, and approval. So I don't know if it's going to work here. That's another one of these tests here. Which of the following 4 types of people do you prefer to have around you? Review these descriptions carefully, then indicate the one that most closely relates to your preference and one that represents your second preference. Okay, so let's go back then. Well, let me go through this first. A, people who completely accept you the way you are and feel responsible for your personal problems and welfare. This combines diffuse and effective love. People who do their work, attend to their affairs, and leave you free to do the same. Specific and neutral approval. People who try to improve themselves and have definite ideals and aims in life. Diffuse and neutral esteem. People who are friendly and lively and enjoy getting together to talk or socialize. So what kind of people of these 4 types do you want to have around you? You're supposed to choose 2. What of these people do you prefer to have in your life? And so let me see how I set this up. Professional. So we go back here. How did I set this up? Okay, and you're supposed to choose 2, up to 2. Okay. So please vote. So you can choose up to 2. So there can be more than 6 votes, because if everybody votes twice, there's 12 votes. And it's a matter of, has everybody voted? I guess, right? Which of these 4 types of people do you prefer to have around you? You know, and of course, that's the point, that in diffuse cultures, you don't really make so much of a differentiation between your public and private life. And so so the results are, the biggest category is 4. You like to be among friendly and lively people who enjoy getting together and talk or socialize. I'm trying to remember where I would put myself. When I was a student, I used to be kind of solitary, but I also, you know, like many typical young men, which I regret, I tended to like abuse alcohol on the weekends. So, you know, typically with other people. So, but during the course of the week, I used to study. I used to stay in the library, right? I didn't really talk to many people, to anybody, basically. Okay. And so we go back to the, so here's where they place the different countries. So you can see esteem, approval, enjoyment, love. Where do you rank them? A, E, E, and L. I'm trying to look for Korea. Look, Italy, it's down here on love. Italians love love. Bulgaria, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Greece, Spain. Where's Korea? Can anybody? South Korea up here with Japan and Ethiopia. In seeking esteem. That sounds like face. And over here, you find approval. That's more like achievement-oriented societies. Even if you hate me, you admire me for my success, even if I'm ruthless and vicious. And down here is enjoyment. North Europeans are, but especially Scandinavians, are less specific than Americans, but they are more disapproving of overt displays of emotion. But like the Japanese, North Europeans, they approve the use of alcohol in order to loosen inhibitions. And I guess there's an element of that in South Korea. I don't know if it's still the case, but when I first got here, you know, I was reading books about South Korea for Americans. They say, for example, when the boss says, okay, let's all go out and go to the shikdang, and you could get drunk and you could say some really blunt, nasty things to your boss, and they just they'll accept it if you're drunk. Like you say, oh, I was drunk. Oh, he's drunk. And I guess that's true elsewhere. I kind of like that. Because I've said, you know, well, I'm not going. People feel for each other, but they soft pedal to communicate emotions. The person who can read the signs can reveal much to those who know how to read them in Northern European societies. Diffuse affective cultures spill over into other life spaces. Dishonor to a family member, for example, must be avenged because it disgraces the family. Consequently, you may not be able to work in a company with whom your uncle has a feud going back 10 years. Similarly, if one of your family members has good relations, then that will be useful for you to get a job there. Again, I just, all these come to my mind, these examples that they're just little stories that are not worth talking about even in Italy with my family there, that confirm these kinds of situations. And so reconciling specific diffuse cultures from a personal and corporate point of view, balance is most crucial in this area. Allowing specific extreme can lead to disruptions. Allowing a diffuse extreme can lead to lack of perspective. So specific extreme means you don't bluntly criticize people's individual performance, for example, and diffuse extreme means being unable to show leadership, I think. Those are my comments. A collision between the two can produce paralysis. Most fruitful is an interplay between the two. That's a theme throughout the book. Privacy is necessary. However, the complete separation of private life from the public leads to alienation and superficiality. So even in America, we take pride in saying, hey, man, we're all about individual freedom. I don't care what you do in your private life. You just, what you do in terms of your achievement and performance, that's all I care about at work. But that's not even really true in the American case fully. Strong affiliations come from a stable and deep relationships, even while business is business. And they give you examples of British Air and US Air and the different expectations of service. Americans as a specific culture view price as overwhelming with the sole focus on getting from point A to B. In-flight service should only be an option in an airline if it is purchasable, if available at all. Neither the airline nor the client expect more than providing the basic service, right? If you want something, provide it, but you should pay for it. Don't make me pay for it if I didn't ask for it. Whereas in Europe and Asia, in-flight service is expected, and indeed service is excellent with a focus on the care of the entire person. And then the reconciliation can be by offering business class on an airline like SAS that never offered it previously. So you offer business class, right? That's one way to, provide full service in one price ticket. Okay, so test yourself. A group of managers and financial analysts were arguing about whether profitability or ongoing stakeholder relationships, most especially between company and customers, form the best way of monitoring organizational effectiveness. 4 positions were advanced. 1, feedback within closer customer relationships represents the timeliest advice about corporate effectiveness. Its value is its inclusivity. Profits measure what is taken out of a relationship, but not what is staked or contributed. Or 2, feedback within close customer relationships represents the timeliest advice about corporate effectiveness. Business customers generate the funds used to pay profits. The quality of these relationships anticipates profitability. 3, profitability or shareholder value is the prime criterion of corporate effectiveness because it distills in one precise and unambiguous measure the vitality and value of all the activities by other stakeholders. And 4, profitability or shareholder value is the prime criterion of corporate effectiveness because it proclaims in one precise and unambiguous measure that labor works for capital and that business expects to enrich individual owners. So this is on extreme, two extremes on a continuum. And so how to do this here in terms of voting, what do I have you do in terms of the vote for this? Go here, go to share screen, go here, vote, go here to, I think it's this one, yeah? No. Oh, sorry, it was the wrong one, sorry. Here it is, yeah. So, so please choose up to 4. Please vote. And this would be the American, more the American view, right? I mean, everything serves shareholder value. This notion on customer relationships, that's not the starting point for considering how to address a problem. I mean, even when I read the New York Times business section, I still get that strong sense, right, that 3 and 4, that's the American viewpoint in evaluating corporate effectiveness. Whereas this is more focused upon relationships, more diffuse cultures. Okay. We got some more exercises to go through. And yeah, answer 1 rejects specificity. Answer 2 is a reconciliation of specificity and diffuseness, starting from the diffuse point of view. Answer 3 is reconciliation of specificity and diffuseness, starting from the specific point of view, profitability or shareholder value. And then 4 is, of course, the more extreme element of that. So how we accord status. And let's see, do we want to go through this? Well, I can let you read that on your own. Because, you know, well, let's go through it here. Tips for doing business with or recognizing difference. Specific orientation. Relationships are direct, to the point, and purposeful. People are precise, blunt, and definitive, and transparent. Principles and consistent morality stand independent of the person being addressed. In diffuse orientation cultures, forms of relating are indirect, circuitous, and seemingly aimless. People are evasive, tactful, ambiguous, and even opaque. Morality is highly situational, depends on the person and context encountered. Tips for doing business with diffusively oriented individuals, doing business with specifically oriented people. So if you're from a Japanese or Italian culture and you're dealing with specifically oriented, like Americans, study the objectives, principles, and numerical targets of the specific organization with which you are dealing. Be quick to the point and efficient. Structure the meeting with time interviews and agendas. Americans like that. They want agendas, right? Time interviews and agendas. Do not use titles or acknowledge skills that are irrelevant to the issue being discussed. Do not be offended by confrontations. They're not usually personal. And specifically for oriented people, specifically oriented individuals doing business with diffusely oriented people, study the history, background, and future vision of the diffuse organization with which you expect to do business. Take time and remember that there is more than one way to skin a cat. That's an American expression. Let the meeting flow, occasionally nudging its process. Respect the person's title, age, and background connections, whatever issues being discussed. Do not get impatient when the people are being indirect or circuitous. And differences in managing and being managed. For specifically oriented people like Americans, management is the realization of objectives and standards with rewards attached. Private and business agendas are kept separate from each other. Conflicts of interest are frowned on. Clear, precise, and detailed instructions are seen as assuring better compliance or as allowing employees to dissent in clear terms. And begin reports with an executive summary. For diffusely oriented people, management is a continuously improving process in which quality improves. Private and business issues are interpenetrate. Consider an employee's whole situation before you judge him or her. Ambiguous and vague instructions are seen as allowing subtle and responsive interpenetrations through which employees can exercise personal judgment and reports with a concluding overview. Okay, and how we accord status. These are two ideals, right? We have achieved status. Some societies reward status on the basis of their achievements. It refers to doing things. Ascribe status. Other societies ascribe the status up to people doing so on the basis of age, class, gender, education, other characteristics. It refers to being. So your status is based upon who you are versus what you do. Of course, you can already see there's a relationship between the two. In assessing a person's status, we use our perceptions or of that person's track record, another record of achievement, and by other attributes of the person, like age, a more experienced salesperson, gender, social connections, education, what school did you go to, profession, electronics is the future. Birth, gender, skin color, and others may not have a logical connection with business effectiveness. Some ascriptions, however, are useful in predicting business performance, like, for example, age, professional qualifications, education, and experience. Education and professional qualifications have a connection with achievement because they derive from earlier schooling and training. So that's the relationship. If a corporation has a belief that scholarly success leads to corporate success, then a culture may ascribe higher status to its better educated employees. It may appear in fast track or management trainee programs that directs these recruits to the top of the organization. So the Italians, he claims, respect age and experience more than specific achievements. So the elderly Spaniard was able to resolve the situation with the Italians in that case they're describing, because evidently, Spanish culture and Italian culture share a lot of similarities. For economic success, is achievement really necessary? And achievement orientation is seen by most of the literature as being part of modernization. It is considered to be the key to business and economic success. To traditionally rewarding business success is supposedly self-perpetuating. People work hard to assure themselves of esteem within their cultural community. It becomes the foundation of the achieving society. Status is conferred on those individuals who apply what works best in business, and nations that set out empirically to learn what works best can expect to conduct their economies successfully. It derives from the Protestant ethic, Northern Europe, in other words, the pursuit of justification through works to give achievers a religious sanction. How do you know if you're going to heaven? Are you successful in this life? Does God like you? If you're successful, God likes you. If you're not successful, you're in trouble. In this view, societies that ascribe status are economically backward. The reasons for ascribing status do not facilitate economic success. Catholicism, with its seeming orientation to a more passive way of life, Hinduism with its association of practical achievements with delusion, and Buddhism teaching detachment from earthly matters are teachings emphasizing the ascription of status, and which therefore impede economic development. That's the standard American dominant view after World War II. And so here's a little interesting exercise. To measure the extent of achieving, let me stop the share. You go to the vote. And okay, so here it is. What did I do? Did I forget to I forgot to type that stuff in? Oh, oh, no. I know what I did. I made them each a separate question. So I think that's what I did. Let me check. Yeah, okay. So back to the notes. And I'm going to have to ask you to choose from these notes. So to measure the extent of achieving versus ascribing orientations in different cultures, we use the following statements, inviting participants to mark them on a 5-point scale. Strongly agree or strongly disagree. Okay, that's what it was. Okay, so here are the 5 there's two questions. The first one is, the most important thing in life is to think and act in ways that best suit the way you really are, even if you do not get things done. So back to the screen share. So do you strongly agree, neutral, cannot decide, disagree, or strongly disagree on this question? The most important thing in life is to think and act in ways that best suit the way you really are, even if you do not get things done. The most important thing in life is to think and act in ways that best suit the way you really are, even if you do not get things done. It's anonymous. And 4 of you agree, 1 strongly disagrees, and 1 disagrees. Okay, and then the second question is, the respect a person gets is highly dependent on the person's family background. Strongly agree, neutral, cannot decide, disagree, strongly disagree. So please vote. And 3 are neutral, cannot decide. So let's go back to the notes. So in figure 8.1, this refers to the first question about, do you change who you are, or just to get things done or not? So these show disagreement with these statements. So disagreement with the statement, this statement, the most important thing to do is to act in ways that best suit the way you really are, even if you're not getting. Who disagrees the most? United States disagrees. Sweden disagrees. Norway disagrees, Iceland so these societies disagree that you should not change yourself to get things done. The least disagreement is Philippines. Of course, you should change yourself down here. No, we're not going to change ourselves up here. Cambodia, no, I'm not going to change myself. India, Russia, Romania, Vietnam, they're more willing to not change themselves. Well, sorry, what does it say again? One is disagreeing with these statements. So he says here, 18 societies have a majority of respondents that have a majority favoring getting things done, even if it means restricting my personal freedom to live like I want to live. In other ascriptive societies, in a broad sense, only a minority disagree with getting things done. The majority prefer acting as if it suits you, even if it means nothing is achieved. And English-speaking and Scandinavian societies have majorities in favor of getting things done, even at the expense of personal freedom in order to live as one feels like one should. Where's Korea? Italy's here. Most Italians agree rather than disagree. Cambodians, they agree. Where's South Korea? I'm looking for Koreans. There's Koreans with the Japanese. And then in figure 8.2, this one is respect depends upon family background. So 91, this is disagree with the statement. So 91% of Americans disagree that your status depends upon your family background. These societies tend to emphasize family background more than status. Where's Italy? In the middle. So this is disagree. Minority of people in India disagree. South Korea, minority. See that way up here, third on the list. So family background is really significant. So from culture to culture, aspects of ascription vary greatly. And he claims both figures 8.1 and 8.2 above, those graphs, show a correlation between Protestantism and achievement orientation. In other words, going way back to the founding of Protestantism, you can find out if God likes you, if you're successful. And if you're not successful, you're in big trouble. Catholic, Hindu, and Buddhist cultures score considerably more ascriptively. Across all societies, there is no correlation between age, sex, education of respondents, and support for achievement or ascription. Now that's interesting. There is, however, within specific countries. The data show that there is growing difficulty with the thesis that achievement orientation is the key to economic success. Keep in mind, post-war France and Italy grew faster than the United Kingdom after World War II. Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, and Hong Kong have strong Buddhist and Confucian orientations. Japan's habit of promoting by seniority does not appear to have an elevated non-performance. So seniority really counts for a lot in Japan, more so than it does in the United States, like how old you are and your years of experience. In short, it is not clear that either orientation belongs to a higher level of economic development. Apparently, some highly successful business cultures are ascribing status to people, technologies, or industries that they anticipate will be important to their future as an economy, with the result that these people and sectors receive special encouragement. In other words, ascribing works with achieving by generating social and economic momentum towards visualized goals. So in other words, ascribing works with or together with achieving by generating social and economic momentum towards visualized goals. So, I mean, they're ascribing status to being Kasan digital complex. We've got to have a digital economy. We've got to be biotech. We've got to have, what was it, Snoopy or Snopey, the dog, and that's what we ascribe as being high status. And then we achieve that visualized goal. According to Trump and ours here. So ascription and performance. According to research, French and Italian managers do comparatively emphasize appearing publicly to know all the answers. French and Italian managers, because they're senior, they're expected not to appear that they're wrong. Even if they're wrong, they won't admit it. French geologists are determined to live up to their ascribed status, so status becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Hence, they may strive in performance to meet society's expectations of them. So, yeah, you see that yin-yang orientation between ascription and achievement. So, in practice, achieving status and ascribing status can be finely interwoven. And this is something that's interesting for me because I study the European Union, right? The European Union is a prime example of ascribed self-fulfilling prophecy. Europe, don't you want to be European? I mean, of course, she wants to be European because she's European. Europe, don't you want to be a good European? Europe. This is so appealing. Post-communist Bulgaria, post-communist Poland, when I was there, return to Europe. Poland and Bulgaria must return to Europe by joining the European Union. It's a prime example of an ascribed self-fulfilling prophecy. Before it achieved anything, its power and importance in the world was proclaimed. I've been trying to make sense of that statement in my work. A feature of the world's leading economies, Japan and Germany, is the interweaving of ascribing and achieving orientations. Achieving as individuals here tends to be confined to school, Therefore, managers are supposed to cooperate. Achievement becomes a task for whole groups, with their leaders being individuals who excelled earlier and individually. Okay, well, I think we might have another class coming in, so I have to stop here. And we'll pick up from the next class. And so that's all for today. And I'll see you on Friday, okay?